Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is the story about Naruto. What if Naruto become a guardian of the moon? Part 1. Hope you'll enjoy this video. So before we start, please do support for more awesome content and also hit the subscribe button and share this video with your friends and also support the creator of this fanfic. I have created many playlists, check it out in the channel. So let's start the video. The strong summer breeze churned up dust in the streets of Konoha, the fine particles drifting skyward to mingle with the hundreds of leaves that had strayed from their branches. The din of construction echoed off the massive cliff face that loomed above the dense forest, the sound of hammers mixing with the laughter of the local children to create a bizarre symphony. Shikamaru Nara ambled slowly through the streets, en route to the Hokage's mansion. He shuffled through the stacks of paperwork in his hands, an endless stream of curses racing through his genius mind. Despite his protests, Tsunade had put him in charge of overseeing the reconstruction of the Hidden Leaf village. His thin eyebrows twitched into a frown as he remembered the Hokage's no-nonsense tone, her hands folded gracefully in front of her while she re-aimed into him. As Konoha's head strategist, I thought you would jump on the opportunity to ensure that the village was as efficiently designed as possible. If only you were more motivated, with a mind like yours, you could easily become the Hokage. Shikamaru had smirked, rubbing at his head, as he replied, even if I did have motivation, there's no way I could become Hokage. We both know that Naruto has 100% of the votes. And that's the way it should be. I'll be happy just helping him out whenever he needs me. And besides, he mumbled as he swerved to avoid a group of children playing tag. Naruto probably won't dump so much crappy work on me. I wouldn't be so sure. Shikamaru turned with a deadpan glare, face to face with the prodigious Neji Hyuga. Neji had recently been recruited by Anbu, so it surprised Shikamaru to see him in his white robes. He cocked an eyebrow as he began walking again, Neji falling into step beside him. What a drag. Do you have the day off? Neji nodded in response, shielding his eyes from the sun. They continued on in silence, bits of conversation drifting past them on the breeze. Although the world was still recovering from the recent war, Konoha and its citizens were encompassed by a sense of bliss, the aftermath of the miracles created by the hero of the leaf, Naruto Uzumaki. The son of the fourth Hokage and current Jinchuriki of Kurama the nine-tailed fox was now said to be the strongest ninja in the world. Lately, it seemed that all anyone could talk about was Naruto. It was only natural, of course, Naruto had saved hundreds, if not thousands of lives in the past year. He was, by any sane person's account, a hero. However, the hero in question had disappeared as of late. As if he had read his thoughts, Neji asked softly, has Naruto still not been around much? Shikamaru shook his head slowly. No. And it's not just the amount of missions he's been taking on either. Even when he's home, he's off doing who knows what. Something really seems to be bothering him. Even Sakura has no idea what's going on. When Shikamaru took a moment to consider it, Naruto's personality had changed rapidly over the past couple of years. The first major change had come when Naruto had become a sage and saved the village. In that case, the changes had doubtless been for the better. But ever since the war had ended, Naruto seemed to have become a different person overnight. The baby roundness had fallen away from his face, leaving him angular and handsome. His abrasively loud voice and his habit of being the embodiment of ecstatic energy had also faded, leaving behind a voice that rumbled with authority and an aura of silently humming, pulsating strength. He no longer sought out company, preferring to steal a moment of peace whenever he could. But the one change that shocked Shikamaru the most was that his laughter, which had once been so abundant, had all but faded into memory. He couldn't help but think that, if he hadn't been by Naruto's side through everything, he might not recognize the blonde anymore. When Neji didn't immediately answer him, Shikamaru added in a low voice, he's changed. Neji seemed to consider everything he had said as the Hokage's mansion came into view. War changes people, Nara, especially someone like Naruto who was the spearhead of the attack. I agree that he has changed enormously, he's no longer a child, but in my mind the changes are for the better. And to answer your concern about where he wanders off to, I've noticed that he's taken to sitting on top of the fourth Hokage's figurehead and meditating. So that's where he runs off to Shikamaru's side, kicking a stone on the road and frowning towards the giant faces carved into the cliff above them. It's probably best for him to be alone now. Neji mused, the breeze making his long hair dance slowly behind him. I suspect that he is meditating on a great many things, the least of them being Sasuke? Yes, Niji hummed. The fact remains that Sasuke is still missing, and his defection is of the highest priority. I'm sure that this must trouble Naruto greatly. The papers wrinkled in Shikamaru's grip. That damned bastard Uchiha. Where the hell is he hiding? Shikamaru scowled. Although many teams had been sent out over the past year, trying to track down the rogue ninja, none of them had found even the faintest trace of him. Not to mention that Naruto, the one man who could probably find him with embarrassing ease, had flat out refused to look for him. It doesn't make sense. Shikamaru mumbled, shoving the papers under his arm. As Niji glanced at him curiously, the sound of rapidly approaching footsteps caught their attention. Both jounin turned in unison, tense, as the approaching Anbu ninja stopped a respectful distance from them and bowed quickly. Captain Haitka. We have just received troubling intelligence from our patrol unit. Captain? You've been promoted already? Shikamaru asked under his breath, raising an eyebrow at his fellow genius. Niji raised a silencing hand, frowning. Yes, please report. It appears that Sasuke Uchiha is approaching the village. Shikamaru and Niji exchanged a wide-eyed glance, wondering at the strange workings of fate, before Shikamaru turned and dashed towards the Hokage's mansion. Niji activated his Byakugan, quickly scanning, as he said to his subordinate, return to your team immediately and tell them not to engage the enemy. He is too powerful for any of us to handle alone. Yes, sir. The ninja saluted as he disappeared. It didn't take long for Niji to locate the chakra he had been searching for, blazing fiercely as it hovered sentinel over the village. After noting the positions of the Anbu scouting the perimeters, he raced after Shikamaru, a sense of dread hanging over him. The dark, well-polished wood of the Hokage's desk growled in protest as Tsunade's palm slammed down on it. He's what? She exclaimed, her voice reaching an interesting octave of totally pissed off. Niji remained still as a statue while Shikamaru flinched, feeling like he would be receiving the brunt of her anger. As usual. He complained to himself. Troublesome woman. Like I said, Shikamaru drawled, sounding deceptively bored with the whole situation. Sasuke is strolling towards the village as we speak. We received the information from an Anbu scout. Niji nodded, his milky eyes sharp. He was a member of my squad. I can assure you that the information is reliable. I have given orders for them not to engage in combat. It appears that he is still far enough away that I cannot sense him with my Byakugan. Good. The Hokage said, dropping down into her seat. Though we don't know his reason for reappearing so suddenly, I think it's best to assume that he is still an enemy. I will put the village on level 2 alert, although I don't think we'd be able to stop him with the personnel we have available at the moment should he decide to attack. Niji and Shikamaru exchanged a grave look. As two of the Leaf's most skilled tacticians, they knew better than anyone how vulnerable Konoha was. Even with Naruto's help, there had been many casualties during the war. Niji cleared his throat. Tsunade-sama, shouldn't we summon Naruto? Naruto? The Hokage said distractedly, searching for something under the piles of paper on her desk. He's on a mission. As Niji opened his mouth to reply, a gust of wind blasted into the office, scattering papers across the room. The three jolted in surprise, turning to stare at the golden-haired ninja who had appeared on the windowsill. Due to the heat, the Jinchuriki had opted out of wearing his orange tracksuit lately, his sage cloak flapping the overtop of his black pants and undershirt, which was visibly straining over his muscular torso. His hit-8 was securely in place, holding his bangs away from his piercing, offensively blue eyes. Naruto. Tsunade spluttered. I didn't know you had returned. Naruto Uzumaki's face, concealed by the blinding sunlight streaming in behind him, was blank as he replied, yeah, I just got back this morning, you know. Got-him frowned. But, didn't I assign you to escort Sakura to the sand village? Naruto nodded, leaning comfortably against the frame of the window. I'll go back and get her when the mission is over. Sakura-chan said to herself that there was no use in me hanging around. It's not a big deal. It still takes 3 days to get there while I'm with Sakura-chan, but by myself, I can make the trip in just over a day. Shit, 1 day? Shikamaru muttered, impressed. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Niji nod an unspoken agreement. Granny Tsunade, Naruto said, his unwavering blue eyes gleaming. Please leave Sasuke to me. If anyone else were to attack him, they would be killed instantly. I'm the only one who stands a chance. Tsunade folded her arms across her torso, leaning back into her chair. So you knew that he was coming? Yeah, the blonde replied. I noticed him yesterday. Yesterday? Niji repeated, his eyebrows rising in surprise. Why didn't you say anything? Naruto's gaze flashed over to Niji. He smiled meekly, shrugging apologetically, as he replied, well, because I knew you guys would. He gestured around the room aerially, as if searching for the right word, freak out. The three shinobi stared at him in disbelief. Oi, Shikamaru muttered. We're not freaking out. Granny, Naruto said, ignoring Shikamaru. You know I'm going out to meet him no matter what. So please, promise me that you won't let anyone interfere. Hey, Naruto, Shikamaru said, stepping forward. It doesn't matter how strong you are. I can't let you go out there alone. We're your comrades, so let us go out and fight with you. Naruto's gaze never left the Hokage, his voice soft and steady as he said please. This is something that I have to do alone. Tsunade sat in silence, examining the young ninja. Finally, she averted her eyes, waving her hand dismissively. Do whatever you want, she said with an exasperated sigh. But don't act until you receive the order, you got that? The blonde smiled in relief. Thanks, Granny. If you need me, I'll be waiting on the wall. He had vanished in the blink of an eye, another gust of wind spinning through the office in his wake. Shikamaru sighed, scratching his head. I wonder if it's true that he's faster than the yellow flash, even though he doesn't use the teleportation jutsu. Tsunade turned away from the window, ignoring the heat in her cheeks, as she said, he's definitely becoming more like the fourth every day. That was definitely true. But while Minato had been made of soft edges and a calm aura, Naruto had sharp edges and a blisteringly powerful, intimidating aura. Tsunade, who had known the fourth, saw the similarities better than anyone. Easy there, Tsunade-sama. Shikamaru drawled sarcastically. Don't go falling for Naruto. That would be really troublesome. Niji cleared his throat loudly before the Hokage could send the shadow nin careening through the wall behind them. Back to the problem at hand, it's possible that Sasuke is currently working with someone. If that's the case, then he may be attempting to draw our attention while his partners infiltrate from another direction. We cannot rule out any possibilities at this point. I agree. Shikamaru said, frowning. Though we've confirmed that both Kabuto and Madara are dead, we can't know for sure if that Zetsugai is too. And then there are the members of Sasuke's old team. True. Tsunade said, crimson fingernails tapping the desk. However, if we intend to respect Naruto's wishes, then the most we can do at this point is stand guard and wait. Niji, has Sai returned from his mission? Yes, Hokage-sama. He reported yesterday afternoon. Good. Godim said, rising to her feet. I will leave you two in charge of organizing the Anba unit. Shikamaru, you will act as captain to the Jounin unit since both Kakashi and Yamato are currently out of the village. This is still a level 2 emergency. We must be prepared to defend Konoha at any moment. Now go. Yes, ma'am. The Jounin said in unison, dashing out of the office. They were silent as they made their way down the deserted hallways, the sound of their sandals echoing off the walls. As the exit came into view, Shikamaru sighed loudly. Feeling the Hika's moon-like eyes on him, he cocked his lips into an exaggerated half-smile. Looks like I won't have time for a nap today. The Jounin on guard duty jumped in surprise when Naruto appeared in a sudden gust of wind, skidding to a halt on the wall that was polished smooth from hundreds of feet. His cloak snapped in the wind as he immediately strolled over to the edge of the wall, eyes fixed on something unseen on the horizon. Naruto-sama. One of the nearby shinobi exclaimed, smiling brightly. I'd heard that you were away on a mission? Naruto returned the smile directed his way as he sat on the edge of the wall, legs dangling. I just got back this morning, actually. As expected of Uzumaki-sensei. Akinoichi exclaimed, her cheeks flushed. Behind her, some of the Jounin were beginning to crowd together, their voices buzzing excitedly. Naruto found himself frowning as he looked out over the dense forest that surrounded the village. It wasn't long ago that he had found this sort of attention flattering. But lately, people have taken to referring to him as sensei or sama, and he found himself unable to get used to the honorific titles. Did you have to deal with this too, Dad? Naruto wondered, pouting slightly. It was times like these when he truly longed for his parents. With everything that had happened over the past year, Naruto found himself, more than ever, needing someone to consult with. I wonder if these guys realize I'm still just a genin. Excuse me, Uzumaki-sensei? A young ninja asked timidly, blushing furiously, as she stepped forward. Would it be possible to get an autograph? A deep, regal voice cut in before Naruto could answer. I'm afraid that Naruto is without a pen at the moment. Neji said, his intense, pale eyes clearing a path through the group of ninja. It would seem that you are all neglecting your duties. The ninja dispersed quickly. Naruto turned to smile at the Hyuga, who had changed into his Anbu uniform. Sai walked a pace behind him, smiling at his former teammate. They came to stand beside the blonde, following his gaze out over the landscape. Do not think ill of them, Naruto. They simply admire you. Neji said, smiling at Naruto in a knowing way. As a member of the Hyuga clan, I have experienced something similar. Oh, I see. Sai said, nodding enthusiastically. I have read in a book that sometimes you can cheer up a friend by comparing their situation to one that you have experienced. I believe the term they used was empathy. However, in this situation, it is probably exaggerated. Right, Captain Hyuga? Idiot. Neji muttered, while Naruto snorted. Thanks, Neji. Naruto said with a smile. It doesn't really bother me, but it is a little hard to get used to. And his voice lowered as his smile faded. For every person who admires me, there's another who's afraid of me. Well, that's to be expected. Shikamaru's lazy drawl reached them before he did, as he ambled along with his hands in his pockets. Rumor has it that you won the war almost single-handedly. Everyone's saying there isn't a ninja alive who could lay a finger on you. Naruto frowned, his right hand resting over the seal on his stomach. Kurama. I know, kid. The fox said, lifting his head from the cradle of his paws. I'm ready whenever you are. Is everything ready? Naruto looked up in confusion before realizing that Neji had directed the question towards Shikamaru, who was now standing beside him. The strategist nodded. Everyone of Chunin level or higher has been alerted of the situation. We're going to be working with 3 lines of defense. The wall, the business district, and the perimeter of the Hokage's mansion. Is Anbu ready to act? Sai nodded. I will be performing aerial surveillance to compensate for our inability to send any units beyond the wall. The rest of Anbu will be divided between the outer perimeters and the Hokage's defense. Good. Shikamaru said, sliding his gaze cautiously to Naruto. Are you sure you don't want anyone to go with you, Naruto? Naruto sighed as the wind ruffled his spiky hair. Shikamaru noticed, for the first time, that it had gotten quite long recently. No doubt Sakura was nagging him to get it cut. If Sasuke seriously came to fight, then I won't be able to hold back. In that case, the village will be the safest place to be. I would be worried about accidentally hurting my comrades if anyone were to come with me. He closed his eyes, hiding whatever emotion passed over them, as he said, if we're lucky, today will be the end. His comrades stood in shocked silence, not knowing how to respond to the sudden statement. Shikamaru frowned in discomfort, willing Naruto to look up so he could study those deep blue eyes. Instead, the blonde folded his hands into a meditative stance, orange markings appearing on his eyelids as he mustered his sage powers. If you guys have everything organized, then I'm going to head out. Neji hummed lightly, putting on his bird-like mask. In that case, you had better get in the air, Sai. The pale ninja nodded gravely, then pulled out his super beast scroll in one fluid movement. After a moment of scribbling, he formed the hand seal for his unique jutsu, and a giant bird burst out of the scroll to perch beside him. He hesitated before jumping on its back, a concerned frown playing across his face. Naruto. I'll be fine. Naruto replied, smiling reassuringly. When Sai was airborne, Shikamaru glanced sideways to take in Naruto's face. He was surprised to see a faint smile on his lips. Shikamaru was suddenly hit by nostalgia, remembering the days when the Konoha 11 were young, innocent, and naive. Back in those days, Naruto had always been smiling, with Sasuke's name on his lips. It had been a long while since Naruto had been able to smile without a shadow lurking in his eyes. Damn Uchiha. I won't forgive you for what you've put him through. I'm glad Sakura-chan is in the hidden sand. Naruto said suddenly, interrupting Shikamaru's train of thought. After all this time, she still loves Sasuke. So do you, Nara thought. Okay, Naruto exclaimed, turning to point purposefully at the Shadow Nin. I trust you to take care of the village while I'm away. He jumped up, crouching on the wall, as his eyes focused on an unseen chakra on the horizon. Geez. Shikamaru grumbled, rubbing his temple, as he sensed Anbu members, as well as regular ninja gathering behind him. Picking up on their mood immediately, Shikamaru sighed. Be careful out there, Naruto. Naruto reached behind himself to flash thumbs up before rocketing off the wall, turning into nothing more than a blur as he disappeared down the main road. He has too much energy. Shikamaru mumbled to Neji, whose Byakugan eyes were already scanning. Naruto is prepared to die to stop Sasuke. The Anbu captain replied, crossing his arms. We should honor his dedication by doing our best at the tasks assigned to us. Irritatingly noble, as always. Shikamaru jabbed, raising a taunting eyebrow. Noble? Neji replied, smiling in response to their banter. I prefer to think of it as being loyal to an old friend. I think we agree on that particular point. Shikamaru returned his smile, nodding. Alright. Let's do this. The Leaf's head strategist grabbed his hands as Neji went about organizing the ninja on the wall, his regal tone leaving no room for objections. However, he kept his focus on the sun-like chakra of the Uzumaki, who was rapidly approaching a person with chakra as cold as an Arctic winter. The Jinchuriki, Naruto Uzumaki, has been named an international hero and is the favorite candidate to become the next Hokage of Konoha. The dust that rose around Sasuke's sandals got caught by the wind, rising in a small tornado around him as he made his way down the quiet road. How can I become Hokage when I can't even save one friend? Far overhead, a hawk circled slowly, sharp eyes scanning the ground for prey. The forest surrounding Konoha was, as it had always been, silent and watchful as the raven-haired Uchiha went by. If I die, we both die, Sasuke. Frowning deeply, Sasuke reached up to run, shaking fingers through his hair, studying the ground before his feet. He rounded a corner in the road, glancing up suddenly when color caught his eye. Before Sasuke could even register what was happening, a tanned fist came careening towards his jaw. The solid hit sent him flying back, though he managed to save himself from an embarrassing sprawl across the ground by sliding to a stop on his knees. He screwed his eyes shut against a pain, spitting out blood, as a pair of strong, rough hands found his shirt collar and used it to pull him to his feet. A loud, familiar voice assaulted his ears. Where the fuck have you been? Do you have any idea how worried I was? Sasuke opened his eyes, squinting against a headache that was already forming from the hit. You're loud, idiot. He kept his eyes trained towards the ground, examining the space between their sandaled feet. In that moment, Sasuke found that the idea of looking up, of facing those honest blue eyes, was terrifying. The wind danced between them, carrying dust and the scent of leaves warmed by the sun. After what seemed like an eternity of silence, Naruto's hands slipped away as smoothly as the name he whispered on an exhaled breath. Sasuke? As if controlled by chakra strings, the dark-haired ninja found his gaze pulled towards that voice. He followed a line of gleaming light from one sharp collarbone to another, to the hollow of Naruto's throat, and then upwards, chasing the path of sinew and tendon to find a proud, strongly crafted jaw. He took his time examining the gleam of sunlight and golden hair before sliding his gaze across whisker-like markings. Finally, his eyes came to rest on Naruto's lips, watching, as if hypnotized, as they began to move. Every time I see you, it's somehow like we're meeting for the first time. A pang of guilt shot up from Sasuke's chest, threatening to close his throat. He clenched his fists so the blonde wouldn't notice his fingers shaking as he reached for his defenses, slamming a protective wall between them. He managed a cold smirk, raising one dark eyebrow. You're right, Naruto. We might, as well, be strangers. You're a terrible liar. Naruto replied immediately. I don't think you would have such a hard time looking a stranger in the eye, would you? Sasuke's eyes shot up as anger flared within him. But, as soon as his gaze rested upon twin pools of depthless sapphire blue, the anger faded faster than it had appeared. Sasuke found himself stepping back, suddenly feeling uneasy with their close proximity. He noticed then, for the first time, that Naruto had gotten taller than him. The sage stood with his hands in his pockets, the wind ruffling his golden hair and deep red cloak. Behind him, the carved heads of the Hokages loomed above Konoha, watching haughtily as Sasuke gaped at his childhood friend. Do you know how much you throw me off? Sasuke wondered, watching as Naruto frowned, fighting with whatever emotions were raging within him. Just being around you messes with my head, you idiot blonde. At that thought, the memory of their encounter during the war flashed across Sasuke's mind, almost a year ago to the day. And yet it seemed so far away that it may, as well, have occurred in a different world. Naruto bent over, breathing heavily, as sweat dripped from his brow. The landscape around him was utterly destroyed. Huge chunks of earth were broken and overturned, and water was rushing up from the ground. Here and there, the bodies of the former Jinchuriki lay silently within the rubble. B lay on his back panting, mumbling something about being too tired to even rhyme as he gripped a deep cut on his abdomen. As expected, their opponent had disappeared as soon as his Jinchuriki army had been destroyed. "Are you alright, Naruto?" Kakashi placed a hand on his ex-student's trembling shoulder, his headband already pulled down to hide his Sharingan. "I'll be fine," Naruto replied roughly as he wiped sweat from his brow. "I just need to rest for a few minutes before we head out again." His old sensei nodded firmly, glancing over to his rival. Guy was visibly pouting, clearly unhappy with being outshone by a boy many years his junior. Kakashi sighed loudly, hoping that this would be over quickly so that he could get some peace and quiet. "Listen, Naruto," the white-haired ninja said, turning back to his student. "Can you let Guy and me out of here? We'll be fine now." More than fine, actually, Kakashi thought. Not only did Naruto's chakra heal our wounds, but I feel much stronger than I usually do. The blonde nodded and straightened up, rolling his broad shoulders and stretching his tired arms. He then held two fingers before himself, concentrating for a moment. Then suddenly, the massive form of the nine-tailed fox retracted into his body, rushing silently and swiftly like a living, liquid fire. After being encompassed by that chakra, the air felt surprisingly cold. Naruto exhaled sharply, folding his hands behind his head and leaning back. He surveyed the wreckage around them with a deep frown. Kakashi continued to observe him, unable to forget the moment when Naruto had appeared before them, saving them from the tailed beasts. "Sensei, can you see your son from where you are?" Kakashi thought idly. "Forgive me, Sensei, but I think he has surpassed you completely." "Kakashi." Guy's sudden outburst made them both jump. "I think we'd better get B to the medical team right away. This wound is pretty bad. And besides, we should really check in with the other units." Kakashi nodded before looking back at Naruto warily. The blonde read his thoughts, grinning widely. "Don't worry about it, Kakashi-sensei. I really am going to rest for a bit. And besides, I can't see the enemy returning here. Not for a while, at least." After hesitating for a moment, Kakashi nodded, concern flashing over his charcoal black eye. "Don't do anything reckless," he said in the bored, exasperated tone he was so used to using Jinchuriki. The copy ninja turned and made his way over to Guy, helping him hoist their injured comrade. After a few minutes the massive ninja submitted to their support, though his words of protest echoed around the rocky space as the three slowly made their way in the direction of the closest medical team. As soon as they had vanished from sight, Naruto lowered himself to the ruined ground, clutching at his chest. His eyes stung hotly as he whispered, "You can sense him too, right, Kurama?" The fox demon frowned, baring his teeth in distaste. "Of course, kid. How could I not notice a chakra so ominous?" Naruto closed his eyes, retreating to the silence of his inner world. He walked through the water until he was leaning against Kurama's paw. The fox grumbled absently, laying his chin down so that his eye was almost level with Naruto's head. The blonde nuzzled tiredly into his fur, inhaling the scent of wood smoke that rose from it. "What will you do, Naruto?" Kurama asked. Naruto turned, seeing his own reflection in the red eye behind him. "About Sasuke, you mean?" He retreated from that steady gaze, folding his arms around the ache in his chest. "His chakra has become so much darker since the last time I saw him, but there's something odd about it that I can't figure out just yet. I feel like he's seriously upset right now." Silence fell between them for a while as they tracked the progress of that dark chakra, flickering unsteadily like a candle as it grew steadily closer. "I have no idea why he seems so unstable, but I doubt that he'll hear anything you say to him, Naruto." "Yeah," the blonde agreed sadly. "I'm prepared to fight him this time, if I have to. As his friend, it's my duty to stop him, no matter what." He stood suddenly as Kurama's ears perked alertly, both of them focusing on the chakra that was just over the horizon. "However," Naruto whispered as he opened his eyes to the battlefield, "I will never stop hoping that I can save him." He stood then, turning to face the column of dust that appeared when a blurred figure slid into view. Without pausing, Sasuke began to charge forward to attack. But then he broke free from the clouds of dust and his steps faltered as his eyes were met by steady blue ones. Without noticing it, Sasuke slowed to a stop, his hands freezing halfway through the hand sign he was forming. "This is a fascinating game that we're playing, isn't it, Naruto?" Sasuke thought as conflicting emotions flashed across his eyes. "I wonder, though, will it continue as the battle between Madara and the first Hokage did until we have lost sight of ourselves? Or will your prediction come true and see us dying here, side by side? The raven-haired Uchiha closed his eyes, as if in pain, a deep crease forming between his eyebrows. Naruto watched quietly, observing his opponent with the utmost care. A gentle breeze blew through his hair, carrying with it the scent of upturned earth and blood. This war, Naruto said, his deep voice rough with emotion, will come to an end soon. Madara should realize by now that he can't win. The alliance is too strong. We will overcome the hatred in this ninja world. Well, I think I can say, honestly, that I wouldn't mind dying if it was by your hand. Sasuke mused, ignoring Naruto's declaration. But I will take you with me. That is the final punishment I'll inflict on those who have hurt and betrayed me by taking their hope, their hero, with me into death. This bond that I was unable to sever, this bond that made you pursue me relentlessly, it will be this bond that destroys us both. His lashes lifted to reveal brilliantly crimson Sharingan eyes, honed and perfected by a history of hatred and betrayal. When Sasuke looked at his childhood friend through those eyes, it was easier to make him an enemy. Easier to ignore those depthless orbs, bluer than the Caspian Sea, and transform their gaze into the calculating gaze of an opponent, rather than the concerned scrutiny of a friend. Naive, as usual. Sasuke replied, voice cold and distant. This world will never be free of hatred. Hatred is power. Without hatred, mankind would be nothing. The Jinchuriki smiled sadly. You sound like the Nine Tails. TCH. Sasuke muttered, scowling. He crouched forward, reaching to grip the hilt of his sword. Naruto didn't react to his changed stance. Instead he sighed, turning his gaze towards the clouded sky. For a time he simply stood, watching the churning of the gray sea above them. But when he returned his focus to the man before him, Naruto's face had become an unreadable mask. Fine. Sasuke, let's finish this. Sasuke's eyes widened. The words that slipped between Naruto's lips prompted Sasuke to notice the deep circles beneath his eyes, the slump of his broad, proud shoulders, and the looseness of his fingers. Why does he seem so exhausted, all of a sudden, Sasuke wondered. He barely raised his blade in time to block Naruto's first attack, both his sword and the kunai in the sage's hand shattering into pieces. They remained in close proximity, exchanging rapid blows, their movements a blur of yellow and white. Sasuke stared intently at his opponent, still transfixed by disbelief. He looks like he's on the verge of tears. Naruto clenched his teeth, eyes yellowing, and movements increasing in speed as he entered sage mode. Sasuke retreated, summoning Chidori into his palm as they raced at each other once more. A hard kick found Sasuke's ribs, sending him flying back across the rocks. He skidded to a halt, head jolting up as he braced for the follow-up attack. But Naruto remained where he had delivered the blow, eyes turned once more towards the sky as he waited for Sasuke to collect himself. A loud confident voice echoed in Sasuke's memory as he looked at his childhood friend in confusion. When two ninja become strong enough, they can read what's in each other's hearts from a single blow. Did you see it, Sasuke? Did you see what was in my heart? Sadness, exhaustion, resignation, and regret. Sasuke said, stepping forward slowly. That is what I saw in your heart just now, Naruto. Have you truly become so pathetic and weak? If you have time to criticize me, then maybe you should be trying to sort out your own damn emotions. Naruto cut in sharply, the embers of a fire flashing in his eyes. Coming at me with Chidori? You've got to be joking, Sasuke. If you don't fight me seriously, you'll be forcing me to murder a person I love. Sasuke stopped dead. He licked his dry lips nervously before whispering, love? I've already told you this, but I know all about what happened with Itachi. Naruto continued. And I understand why you acted the way you did. Your brother gave me the task of stopping you, and to honor his sacrifice, I will. For years now, I've tried desperately to understand. To know what you're feeling, because I couldn't figure out why you left. Why did you choose revenge over the people who cared for you? But you never tried to understand me, did you, Sasuke? Sasuke stood rooted to the earth, eyes wide in shock, the lightning screaming in his palm completely forgotten. It probably never occurred to you that other people suffer too. Especially me, since you never thought of me as anything more than a nuisance. It makes me sad to think that we will die without ever understanding one another. With that said, Naruto held up two fingers and a sudden whirlwind rose around him, howling like the demon fox concealed within Naruto's body. For a moment, the blonde ninja was concealed by the loose earth caught in the wind. But when he reappeared, Naruto Uzumaki shone like a flame, his golden chakra warmer than the rays of the sun. And his eyes, gleaming gold, looked on with a quiet intensity that truly unnerved Sasuke. The prodigious Uchiha found himself shaking, every nerve in his body crackling with awareness. Never in his life had he felt a chakra of such potency. It was so vast that he could not comprehend the limit of it, and so terrifying that his instincts were screaming for him to run. But at the same time, that chakra was so warm and familiar that Sasuke found himself drawn to it. When he had faced Naruto, as he wore the Nine Tails cloak, it had been incredibly easy to fight him. It was simple to forget that it was Naruto, as the eyes of the demon fox glared at him. But these eyes that watched him so unwaveringly were undoubtedly the eyes of his closest childhood friend. These eyes were wide, steady, and unsettlingly beautiful. They were eyes that, with unfaltering honesty, displayed every emotion that touched Naruto's heart. It was these eyes which, from time to time, haunted Sasuke's dreams. He would wake in a cold sweat, hardly able to breathe from the weight of the guilt crushing his chest. But at the moment, those familiar, gleaming blue eyes were as fiercely gold as the crown on a king. For the first time in his life, Sasuke found himself aching to see that blue. He watched shakily as Naruto's gaze swept over him once more, starting from his feet and working upwards. Finally, the blonde's gaze traced slowly over his dry lips, his cheekbones, and then settled on his eyes. Sasuke jolted and took a retreating step, half turning, as the emotion in Naruto's gaze ripped through his core. He wanted to scream. He wanted to run. He wanted to destroy everything until he forgot those terrible, beautiful eyes. But instead he scowled coldly, adjusting his stance and slipping beneath an act of stubborn pride. His Sharingan focused on the fox that was curled comfortably within Naruto. He noticed, for the first time, that it was free of its cage. Sasuke smirked, intruding upon Naruto's inner world to stand before the Nine Tails, as he had done once before. "So, you let yourself get tamed by this moron? Shouldn't you have a nice collar now?" The fox bared his teeth, a low rumbling rising from his chest. "You pathetic child," the Nine Tails said, his voice booming in the silence, "get those filthy eyes out of here, and don't you dare speak about Naruto with that damned tongue of yours." He lunged forward, his jaws snapping powerfully, where Sasuke had been milliseconds before. Sasuke retreated, staring with utter disbelief at the Jinchuriki. Naruto rubbed his head, laughing uncomfortably. "Oh wow," he said, "you've seriously pissed Kurama off. He's going on a rampage." "Kurama? Does he mean the Nine Tails?" "Naruto," Sasuke said, managing to make his voice haughty and condescending. "Did you do all this?" He gestured around at the landscape, his eyes lingering on the ruined mountain over the blonde's shoulder, columns of dust rising from it like smoke. Naruto laughed uncomfortably again, rubbing his stomach as he put half of his concentration into calming the fox still seething within him. "Yeah, Uncle B and I were fighting the other Jinchuriki earlier." Disbelief drained Sasuke of his will to fight. He stood, limp and lost in thought, while Naruto continued to mumble to Kurama. It wasn't fair. Sasuke was supposed to be the strong one. It was Sasuke who had abandoned his village, left his home, and walked through the darkness to become stronger. He had seen things that someone like Naruto couldn't begin to imagine, and done things that the blonde wouldn't be able to fathom. Everything was for the sake of power. So then, why? Why was Naruto so strong that Sasuke didn't dare make a move against him? Why was it that Naruto, the boy who had been fated to carry a similar burden to his own, could have a life so profoundly different? Why did he walk so proudly forwards in the light, while Sasuke was forced to slither along in the darkness? How was it possible for the blonde to shake him up so much, simply by being near him? Sasuke had never hated as much as he did at that moment. He hated his fate and his weakness. He hated the boy standing before him. Hated his smile, hated his eyes, hated his dreams, and the fact that he was capable of achieving them. "I hate you. I hate you so much, Naruto. So then, why? Why am I in so much pain right now?" He turned his back to the blonde. Only moments before, he had felt powerful enough to destroy Naruto with his own hands. He had been determined to bring all this to an end, once and for all. And yet, with a single look from Naruto, he was completely defeated. Naruto's voice drifted from behind him. He was mumbling to the beast inside himself, amusement in his exhausted tone. "No, we're not going to shred anything." "Naruto? Eh? And what would be the point of burning that?" "Naruto? Plunder?" A laugh echoed across the rocks. "What are you, a pirate? Run." I have to get away from here. Sasuke took a step forward. Yes, that's right. Run. Go now. Sasuke, Naruto's voice, was low and rough. You can go if you want. I won't stop you as long as you promise not to attack anyone from the alliance. I don't really want to fight you. And I truly don't want to hurt you. When Sasuke didn't respond, Naruto circled around to stand before him, studying his face carefully, absorbing every detail. Stop. Please stop. To Naruto, Sasuke had always seemed like a full moon in the winter, pale and cold and achingly beautiful. Long ago, Naruto had resolved to endure the cold if it meant he could be closer to that brilliant white moon. Sasuke? Naruto said, in a tone gentler than any Sasuke had heard him use before. It's okay. It's okay. Just 2 words. 2 simple words that made Sasuke's heart ache so much, he thought for sure that it would burst. He felt himself grasping desperately for a defense against this illogical pain. All I want is to free you from the hatred that's been controlling you. It was these words which made Sasuke snap. He suddenly felt a rush of emotions so intense that goosebumps rose on his arms and convulsions racked his thin frame. Don't take this away from me, Sasuke screamed. You, Itachi, you're all telling me that I'm wrong. But what if I don't remember who I am without hatred? Without hatred, I am nothing. That's not true. Naruto said, smiling warmly. With or without your hatred, you are, and always will be Sasuke. The Sasuke I used to know was strong and never gave up. And even though he was a total jerk sometimes, we had a lot of fun together and made each other laugh. Sasuke, I'm not trying to tell you that you're wrong, and I'm not trying to take anything from you. The reason why I've been chasing after you all these years is because I miss my best friend. I want you back, Sasuke. Don't fuck around, Sasuke yelled, blood falling from his eyes in a cruel mockery of tears as unchecked emotion flashed across his face. You revealed that you'd given up on your future, your dreams, when you said that we would die together. Why can't you admit that you're tired, that the burden is too much for you? Don't you see that you're being used, just like me? All they care about is our power. We're cursed, Naruto. You and I, our fates were cursed from the beginning. Sasuke squeezed his eyes shut, chest heaving against a pain raging within his core. All he needed was the darkness and the comfort of being the only one capable of existing there. He forgot that the Jinchuriki should have been responding and that the silence was too absolute. The more he sank into the darkness, the more his pain shut off his senses. Yes, this is the way it should be. You and I both, Naruto, would be better off disappearing forever. Then suddenly, Naruto was standing scarcely an inch away, and there was light, a light so vivid that it penetrated Sasuke's eyelids and illuminated the darkest corners of his heart. All of his pain, his uncertainty, his suffering, was pulled out into the open. And within that light it seemed less overwhelming than it did within the recesses of his mind. Before he knew it, that light was all that existed, and the warmth of it soothed the ache within his chest. A voice reached him from somewhere near, soft and deep and painfully familiar. You're right, Sasuke. I'm a little tired. When the dark-haired ninja opened his eyes, he found himself on his knees, his head pressed against a warm, broad chest. 2 arms were wrapped tightly around him, one hand slipping into his hair, while the other fisted in the loose fabric of his shirt. Sasuke, every burden I've taken on, I've done so willingly. For the sake of protecting my dreams and the dreams that were left behind for me, I will bear any burden. Even if it is hatred. Even if it seems impossible. But out of everything, the one burden that's slowly crushing me is the one you placed on me, Sasuke. You're cruel, you know. Always moving just beyond my reach, yet keeping my hope alive that one day I'll catch up with you. Naruto's voice broke as he lowered his golden head to lean it against Sasuke's. The golden flames which embodied his power now encompassed them both, shutting away the rest of the world. I said I would die with you if we were ever to fight, if you were to put me in a position where I had no choice but to kill you to protect what's important to me. But one thing that I can say now, with certainty, is that I truly intend to die with you. It's up for you to decide, Sasuke, whether it's now or in 100 years. Sasuke held his breath, his mind and body still numb from the overwhelming brightness that continued to rampage within him, purging all the darkness it could find. Naruto. Without making a conscious decision to do so, Sasuke found his arms moving, sliding up Naruto's sturdy back until his hands found a pair of broad shoulders. And then, he was holding on with all his might, his whole body shuddering with tears, as he saw exactly For the first time in his life, all the pain that Naruto had ever been through. Naruto's chakra assaulted his mind, refusing to let him turn away, as it exposed a lifetime of suffering, as honestly as blood would. Even if we are cursed, Naruto said, then I'm glad to know that we're both cursed together, Sasuke. Sasuke lifted his head so that his eyes were level with Naruto's. As he stared into the golden orbs, he felt as if he were seeing Naruto, truly seeing him, for the first time in his life. This stupid, irritating, loudmouthed blonde. He thought with a smile, his eyes slipping shut, as Naruto's rough fingers wiped the blood from his cheeks. Nai-san, is this what you meant when you said I was being guided by the light without me knowing? Sasuke, everything will be okay. Naruto said, a smile spreading across his face. It's okay now. Whether darkness still existed beyond this place, Sasuke could no longer tell. Naruto had dragged him, roughly, and rather unceremoniously, out from the comfort of the dark and into the blazing light. But he found himself clinging to the light, its warmth, needing it with a desperation that Sasuke found alarming. Don't leave me. Don't you dare throw me back into the darkness now. Sasuke? I love you, you know. Without understanding why he felt the urge to do it, Naruto placed a kiss on Sasuke's forehead with exaggerated caution, as if the pale man before him was something incredibly fragile. He lingered there for a while, and Sasuke clung to his scent, as if it was his lifeline. It's okay, Sasuke. I'll always be waiting for you. Always. The blonde rose to his feet, his touch slipping away softly. I need to get back to the fight. Sasuke was silent, too confused to speak. Think about what it is that you truly want, and then come find me. I'll be waiting. And then he was gone. But his presence lingered, and it burned, and it poured into Sasuke's lungs, and stole his breath, and made him weak. So Sasuke knelt there, and wept, and hated Naruto for completely destroying everything he thought he was, with one simple look, and one gentle touch. Naruto's voice dragged Sasuke back to the present. Jinchuriki's eyes were soft, a smile on his lips, as he asked, have you decided, Sasuke? Sasuke hesitated for a moment. That depends on whether you were able to do what I asked. Of course, Naruto said seriously. I haven't told a single person what actually happened during the war. I've kept our secret, Sasuke. After scouring every inch of his face for any hint of a lie, Sasuke sighed. In that case, I've made my decision. Naruto, I've been alone ever since the last time we met, and I've done a lot of thinking during that time. So, Naruto, I would like you to capture me. I'm here to surrender. Blue eyes widened in shock. Wait, what? Are you sure? I mean, I'm happy, but you aren't planning anything bad, are you? Don't get me wrong, I still hate Konoha for ruining Itachi's life and destroying my clan. Sasuke said coldly. However, I want to respect Itachi's will. That's why I'm going to face my crimes and make amends for what I've done. Unreadable emotion flashed across Naruto's face as he eliminated the distance between them, pulling Sasuke into a rough embrace. I'll make sure you get a fair trial. Believe it or not, I actually have a lot of influence now. The blonde whispered, his voice shaking, so much it was difficult to understand him. I'm so happy, Sasuke. I'll finally be able to tell everyone the truth about what you did during the war. Whatever, dope. Sasuke said, smiling despite himself. Let's just go, before I change my mind. Before that, Naruto said, stepping back to level Sasuke with an intense look. Things are going to be pretty crappy for a while, Sasuke. I think it's best if you forget your pride for now. It'll make things easier on everyone. But don't worry, I'll make sure to protect your pride until this is over. Sasuke hesitated, eyes mapping out the contours of Naruto's face. Since the last time they had seen each other, the blonde had definitely matured. His cheekbones and jawline were sharp and strongly set, the hollows of his cheeks touched by shadow. His spiky, unkempt hair had gotten longer, falling around his face in a way that drew attention to his eyes. Sasuke felt slightly overwhelmed as he realized, with a rush of gut-wrenching confusion, how handsome Naruto was. The ache blooming deep within his chest grew, sending shards of undefined need shooting through his veins. His fingers trembled from the force of it. Finally, he managed to smirk. Alright, Naruto. But remember, this is Uchiha pride you're talking about. Keep that in mind. Naruto nodded. Sorry, Sasuke, but this will go a lot smoother if you're unconscious. Before he could react, Sasuke felt a sharp pain at the base of his neck, and the world went black. But he could still sense a warm, bright presence, which wrapped itself around him like a blanket. As he had done so often over the past year, Sasuke mentally kicked himself for believing, even for a moment, that he was alone. Naruto? I don't believe it. What on earth is going on? Shikamaru jumped in surprise at the change in Niji's tone. He squinted his sharp eyes, trying to will a Byakugan into existence, as he asked, "What do you see? What happened?" "I think Sasuke may have just surrendered." Shikamaru scrambled up from his relaxed position, dark eyes wide with shock. "How can that be? What's going on, damn it? See for yourself," Niji said, shutting his eyes, as a gust of wind ruffled his long bangs. A presence appeared behind Shikamaru so suddenly that he jumped. It was a presence warmer than the summer sun, at once both comforting and inviting, and yet dark with the threat of immeasurable power. Shikamaru spun around, stepping back, as a gasp escaped from his throat. Naruto, infamous for his incredible unpredictability, stood before them with Sasuke, cradled carefully in his arms. Despite his obvious efforts, the blonde couldn't keep a smile from appearing on his face. They stood, utterly dumbfounded, as Naruto shifted Sasuke so that his head leaned more comfortably against his shoulder. For a moment, Shikamaru was distracted by the strange paradox of seeing hands capable of shattering mountains with a single punch hold someone with such gentleness. He shook his head, rubbing his temples furiously against the headache pounding in his ears. Shikamaru searched desperately for the right words to say, an endless selection of lectures passing through his mind. Finally, he managed to find the words that summarized the thoughts of every ninja within the near vicinity. "Naruto, what the hell?" To his immense irritation, the blonde smiled wider. "I've captured Sasuke." Niji's deep voice came from beneath his Anbu mask. "Naruto, you can't just calmly walk into the village carrying a wanted and extremely dangerous criminal bridal style." Naruto laughed. I know, loosen up Niji. I'm taking him directly to prison before reporting to the Hokage. We wouldn't want him waking up before he's properly restrained, you know?" Niji sighed. "Please allow an Anbu escort, at least." "Sorry, Niji, but things will go a lot smoother if I get him out in the open as quickly as possible. You can meet me there." "Wait, Naru," but Naruto was already gone. Shikamaru exhaled exasperatedly, shoving his hands into his pockets. "He never changes, does he?" He couldn't help but smile when Niji crossed his arms, obviously disapproving of Naruto's actions. "Perhaps he needs to be reminded that we both outrank him, Nara." Shikamaru laughed. They both knew that, when it came to Naruto, rank wasn't a factor. I knew Naruto was ridiculously strong, but the difference in their power shouldn't have been that big, right? I mean, he was only gone for about 10 minutes. "That's what I don't understand," Niji said, shaking his head. "They didn't even fight. It truly seems that Sasuke Uchiha surrendered. I find that hard to believe," Shikamaru said, looking back towards the village. "But anyways, we won't know anything until we talk to Naruto. You go ahead and follow him, and I'll report on the Hokage. And I'll take my time." Shikamaru thought with a grimace as he strolled away. Tsunade will go insane after hearing this. Naruto ducked to avoid the desk that was flung towards his head, watching with wide eyes as it exploded through the door behind him, sending shards of wood flying through the room. Shikamaru, who stood with Niji and Sai at the side of the room, flinched as Tsunade's voice assaulted their ears. "You knew this was going to happen, didn't you, Naruto?" They watched as Naruto straightened up, turning to face his Hokage with a guilty smile. "I didn't know that it would happen. I was hoping it would, though." The assembled ninja watched with a mixture of fear and amusement as Tsunade's face turned a deep shade of red, veins popping in her forehead. "Where is Sasuke right now?" "He has been imprisoned, Tsunade-sama," Niji said, while Naruto nodded. "I ensured that all the precautionary methods were in place. His chakra has been completely sealed and he is unconscious for the time being." "I see," Tsunade said with a sigh, sinking down into her chair. She closed her eyes, fighting to regain her composure. Finally, her lashes lifted and her amber eyes fixed themselves onto Naruto. "I would like to know what's going on, Naruto. You know that I try to trust your judgment when it comes to Sasuke, but bringing a dangerous and extremely powerful ninja into our village, what were you thinking?" Naruto rubbed at his head, turning his eyes towards the ground. "I knew that Sasuke would approach the village on his own, though I didn't know if it would be to destroy it or to return to it. That's why I haven't spent the past year looking for him, because I knew that if I just left him alone he would show up someday." He looked up then, eyes burning with intensity. Itachi once told me that Sasuke could easily be dyed any color, and that's why it was so easy for people like Orochimaru and Akatsuki to use him. My hope was that he would be able to find himself without the influence of other people, and it seems my hopes were realized. I think that, for the first time, we're seeing the true Sasuke. He returned to the village to surrender. As I thought. Neji whispered, eyes wide. So he truly surrendered. Naruto nodded before returning his attention to the Hokage. To the surprise of everyone assembled, he lowered himself into a respectful bow. Granny Tsunade, all that I'm asking for is that he gets a fair trial. If everyone is able to listen to what he has to say, I think they'll see that he isn't who they think he is. Tsunade studied the top of his head carefully, her frown transforming into a smile as she said, stand up straight, Naruto. I think I'd be willing to make a deal with you. Naruto looked up curiously, a smile returning to his face as he rose to his full height. Naruto, everyone in the village is well aware that you will be the next Hokage. Tsunade began, fitting her fingers together under her chin. It's true that you're extremely capable, as a ninja, however, you are an idiot. Hey. Naruto mumbled, blushing, as Sai burst into a fit of laughter. It's the truth. Gotem said bluntly. At this point, I cannot approve of you succeeding me as Hokage. Naruto opened his mouth to retort and then seemed to think better of it. He settled for a frown instead, keeping his voice level as he asked, so, what's this deal then? Tsunade smiled. I would like you to take part in a Hokage training program. Naruto's eyes lit up. Hokage training? Cool. You will be taking private lessons with myself, Kakashi Haddock, and Shikamaru Nara. To the world, you are already a symbol of peace, so all that remains is for us to teach you how to be a leader. This training won't be easy for you, Naruto. If you agree to this, then I will do everything in my power to ensure that Sasuke Uchiha is treated fairly. The blonde raised a fist, face set determinedly, and eyes sparkling. I'll do it. If I'm going to be Hokage, then I want to be the best Hokage ever. A collective sigh of amusement and relief breezed through the room. I accept your determination. Tsunade said, nodding. On top of this, you must continue taking on missions, as well as fulfilling your duty as a peace ambassador with the other villages. Do you still think you can accomplish this? Of course. Naruto said. Though, I wish I could go without an escort on those peace missions. It takes so much longer when there's a group of us. Ah, that reminds me. The Hokage said, standing suddenly and walking over to one of the filing cabinets lining her office. There has been an overwhelming number of Jounin who have stepped forward requesting that you receive an honorary promotion in rank. Naruto looked towards his old schoolmates in confusion, only to see them smiling. What does that mean? It means it would be ridiculous to ask you to take the Chunin exams at this point, and you have more battle experience and skill than some of the Jounin. So, even though we aren't doing this the proper way, your rank will be raised from Genin to Jonin. If you accept this, you will be able to take on higher-ranking missions and complete them alone. Rubbing his nose self-consciously, Naruto managed a shy smile. It feels a bit weird not doing this the normal way, but as long as nobody has a problem with it, I suppose I could accept, you know? Tsunade nodded curtly. Alright then, it's settled. But if you don't mind, I'd prefer not to stand in the ceremony. Since we have 3 Jounin present at the moment to act as witnesses, I'll appoint you with your new rank now. Eh? Now? The Hokage rummaged through her files until she pulled out a thick scroll. She made her way over to the wreckage of her desk, tossing chunks of wood aside until she procured a pen. Tsunade knelt then, unrolling the scroll along the floor. The 3 ninjas standing by the window edged closer to see what was written there. Beneath the official documentation that was required for a Chunin to have their rank raised to Jounin, hundreds of names were written in Shizune's neat script. Granny, what's with all those names? Naruto asked, recognizing several ninja from other villages. Ah, well, Tsunade said, as she scanned the scroll. When news got out that you were unable to complete your Chunin exams, I started getting letters requesting that your rank be raised. Many of those letters came from shinobi in other villages. Naruto crouched down to get a better look at the names, eyes shining with emotion. Here we go, Tsunade said, as she reached the end of the scroll. Her hand moved quickly as she signed her name and then passed a pen over to Naruto. Sign your name on the line under mine. While Naruto scribbled down his name with shaking hands, Tsunade gestured to Shikamaru. And I'd like you to sign, as the witness, Nara. Shikamaru sighed as he stepped forwards, kneeling beside Naruto. "How troublesome," he said as he accepted the pen. As soon as he had finished signing his name, Tsunade whipped the scroll out from under them, rolling it quickly. "Great, that's done. Now, all of you get out of here. I already have a lot of work to do, and thanks to Naruto and Sasuke it probably just doubled. Naruto, I'll send someone to inform you when your new rank becomes official. Then it's up to you to get the Jounin uniform and whatnot." "Yes, ma'am." The four ninjas said in unison, bowing slightly before filing out of the office, climbing over the ruined desk. Before he left, Naruto turned back, a wide grin on his face. "Thank you, Granny." The air became steadily colder as Naruto descended the steps towards the high-security cell block. Tiny streams of cool water chased one another down the tiled wall, pooling on the stone steps. As Naruto neared the door at the bottom of the staircase, the two guards on duty saluted formally. "Naruto-sensei. Congratulations on your capture of Sasuke Uchiha." "Yeah, thanks." Naruto replied with a grin. "Has he woken up yet?" "Yes, sir, he came just a few minutes ago. Though, he has been silent since then." "I see. Keep up the good work." "Thank you, sir." The guards saluted again before unlocking the door and holding it open until Naruto had passed through. Naruto's pulse pounded in his ears as he walked through the silent hallways, following the faint trace of cold chakra until he was standing outside a quiet cell. A pair of dark eyes gleamed in the light from the hallway as Sasuke raised his head. "That chakra of yours is something else, Naruto," Sasuke said, smirking. "I could feel you coming from a mile away, and I'm not even a sensory type." Naruto laughed, rubbing his head. "Yeah, I've heard that before. You wouldn't believe how much the sensory types complain about it, you know. Apparently I give them headaches." Sasuke allowed himself a soft laugh before his face hardened and he asked, "So, why are you here?" "Right," Naruto nodded, catching on to his mood immediately. "I've spoken to Granny Tsunade and managed to make a deal with her to ensure that you'll get a fair trial." Relief flashed over Sasuke's face, the tension draining out of his body as he approached the bars. He smiled faintly, allowing himself to feel slightly hopeful as he looked up at Naruto's face and froze. That confusing, painful ache began to throb in his chest once more, his mouth going dry. Naruto's eyes, usually bright and open as the sky, were shadowed by emotion that Sasuke couldn't name. Sasuke felt heat coursing through his body as those striking eyes, reflecting the lamplight, raked slowly over his body. It suddenly occurred to him that, maybe, Naruto was feeling the same thing he was, a confusingly strong need, an unprecedented desire that sparked between them like electricity. Sasuke diverted his eyes, sucking in a slow breath to calm himself. "Get a grip," he admonished himself. "It's just Naruto." Attempting to distract himself from his inner turmoil, Sasuke asked, "Any idea when the trial will be held?" "Not yet, but I'll come and tell you as soon as." "No, don't bother." Sasuke cut across him, his eyes saddening. "Actually, Naruto, I don't think you should come to visit me again before the trial." "What?" Naruto exclaimed, his voice echoing around the silent halls. "Why not?" "Because you're giving me a heart attack, moron." Sasuke thought bitterly, wincing around his painfully pounding heart. "Think about it, Dobe," Sasuke said with a frown. "At this point in time, you're one of the most powerful people in the village. People will get suspicious if you come to see me too often. And what if the trial happens to go our way and I'm released? Then, people will say that the jury was too afraid to upset you or something like that. No, it's definitely best for you to have as little involvement as possible." Naruto folded his arms, a deep frown forming on his brow. "I understand what you're saying, but I don't like it." "Don't complain, you idiot blonde," Sasuke replied with a slight smile. "I'm the one who'll be down here bored, remember?" After a moment of silence, Naruto lowered his gaze. "Sorry." Silence stretched out between them, neither knowing what to say. Sasuke took the opportunity to sneak glances at the blonde through his lashes, drinking in the sight of him in the dim light. He looked like a statue, something crafted from marble that was meant to stand in a museum. Sasuke let his eyes flow along the tendons in Naruto's muscular neck, his gaze falling hungrily onto Naruto's chest. The shirt he was wearing was way too small for him, it bulged and stretched over every glorious rise and fall of muscle. As Naruto reached up to push his gold hair away from his face, his shirt rode up, revealing a thin patch of tan skin. Sasuke swallowed nervously at the sight of two thick veins lacing past Naruto's hip bones and vanishing into his pants. Sasuke's heart skipped a beat, his stomach twisting with warmth. What the hell is wrong with me? Apparently oblivious to Sasuke's scrutiny, Naruto sighed and turned to walk away. Remember not to be a prick, Sasuke. He said, looking back over his shoulder. This is the last time you'll see me until the trial, just like you want. But I'll be out there fighting for you, Sasuke, so make sure you do your best too. After his footsteps had faded, Sasuke lowered his head into his hands, pulling at his hair as he rattled out a deep sigh. Taking a few steps back, Sasuke lowered himself onto the uncomfortable prison bed. He followed the path of Naruto's bright chakra until it suddenly disappeared far above him, outside the walls of the ninja prison. It's just because he said he loved me. Sasuke assured himself, not believing himself even as he thought it. He's the one who's always touching me. I'm just confused. But there was nothing confusing about the decidedly southern path his blood was taking. And, as the memory of those unreadable, shadowed eyes consumed Sasuke's vision, he curled in on himself, whispering hoarsely. Shit. Naruto reappeared on the figurehead of the fourth Hokage that loomed over the village. He bent down, bracing his hands on his knees as he took a steadying breath. Every nerve ending in his body was tingling. Sasuke had never looked at him like that before. It had taken all of Naruto's willpower to turn and walk away from the waves of tension that had been radiating between them. Although he had realized a long time ago that his feelings for Sasuke went far beyond the normal limits of friendship, he had never in his wildest dreams imagined that Sasuke could feel the same way. With a deep sigh, he settled into a meditative position, attempting to calm himself by allowing his consciousness to roam. As he collected natural energy, he sensed a familiar chakra approaching. He turned as Kakashi appeared in a puff of chakra smoke, his hands in his pockets and silver hair ruffled from the wind. Yo, Naruto, he said with a wave. I just got back from my mission. It wasn't long before I heard the news. Naruto nodded, turning to look back out over the village as his old sensei came to stand beside him. His tone was strange as he said, a lot happened today, you know. Kakashi examined him for a moment, his dark eyes lightened to silver blue by the sun. Recognizing the look of uncertainty on Naruto's face, he asked carefully, are you really okay with all this? With Sasuke and your advancement in rank? Not to mention this training program Tsunade's concocted. Naruto smiled, suddenly grateful that he wasn't as transparent as he used to be. His voice was low and calm when he replied, even if I wasn't, it seems that this is the way things are going to be. Besides, I've never really done things the normal way. Kakashi laughed, unable to ignore the truth in that statement. He watched as Naruto lowered a hand to the smooth stone beneath them, shutting his eyes. Kakashi-sensei, I know I'm no good at these sorts of things, but he leveled the silver-haired ninja with a serious look. If it's possible, I'd like you to teach me the sealing techniques that my dad used. The fourth sealing jutsu? Kakashi said in shock. Are you sure? Yes, the blonde replied with a firm nod. If I'm able to master it, then it's something that I'll be able to make good use of. You can teach it to me as part of my Hokage training, can't you? Kakashi hesitated. Well, I can't really deny you the jutsu since it was perfected by you, father, but… Great, Naruto interrupted, jumping to his feet. Let's get started then. Easy, Naruto. I just got back from a mission, you know. And you have to leave for the Sand Village tomorrow morning so you can escort Sakura home. He stepped forward, placing a reassuring hand on Naruto's shoulder. I understand that you want to do something, Naruto, and that you really need a distraction right now. But don't worry, you'll be busy enough as it is. Time will pass more quickly than you think. Naruto managed a soft smile, turning his face towards the wind as it ruffled his hair. Kakashi found himself amazed, as he was so often lately, by how much Naruto had come to resemble his father. He suddenly found himself missing the loud, spiky-haired brat he had met years ago in the academy. Hey, Naruto, he said, smiling beneath his mask. How about you let your sensei treat you to some ramen? I'll give you your first leadership lesson while we eat. Ah, there it is, Kakashi thought, as he watched the face of his old student light up. There's that good old Naruto smile. Thanks for watching my video, leave a like if you enjoyed my video, and also do consider subscribing to my channel for more awesome content. If you want the next part of this story, let me know in the comment box. See you next time, till then sayonara.